So the first 10 minutes or so, oh well, c'est la vie. But thank you, and please let me put out a plea to all of you. I actually have a note that I keep to my with my class notes. It says record, but this one had been set off to the side. And so if any of you, like Hannah, if any of you, as we get started with the class, if you could remember, say, hey, Brian, remember about recording, that would be a tremendous boon to the class and would be doing me a great favor. So let me put out a plea to all of you to remember to, I'll try to remember, of course, and I have my message and I, which I need to pay more attention to, obviously. But if as we get started, you could say, oh, Brian, what about recording? Say, okay, yes, we'll do. All right, so thank you. And I apologize to those of you who might be tuning in via recording. You missed the first 15 minutes of brilliance, but so be it. Okay, now back to sharing our screen.
Or we can pretend we're just started now.
Yes, right.
Oh, like, hello, hi. Oh,
like on Monday, we ran into that. But okay, so back to this this comic strip and the singular or individual innovation that this guy is planning to do. I see, that's what the problem is. This singular innovation that this guy is doing, enacting with putting plurals in the middle, and the question that it leads us to about how is this innovation evaluated, and moreover, how is any innovation in the status quo, any deviation from the status quo, evaluated? And then that led us to this question of whether language is the union of speech habits or the intersection of speech habits within a speech community, knowing that the definition of defining speech community is tricky, is important to remember. But variation is a fact of linguistic life. And as I was saying, there's some variation that doesn't get in the way of communication, the tomato sort of variation in pronunciation. But if I started calling a tomato a table, then, and I asked you, could you put a slice of table on my sandwich, that would obviously impede communication. And we'll talk about, actually we'll read a short paper about that kind of situation later on in the semester. But I wanted to call your attention to, all right, so this guy here might be having this sort of silly innovation that he's adopting, but there actually are cases like, we can call this these sort of internal plurals, and think about the plural of the word attorney general. I think if you listen or even or Google these words, you will find both a plural attorneys general with the plural marker here in the interior of this phrase, versus attorney generals with the plural marker at the end. Similarly, with the plural of mother-in-law, you will hear some people say mothers-in-law and others say mother-in-laws. And it's really a matter of whether the whole phrase or the bipartite phrase is treated as a unit and pluralized, attorney generals, or sort of parsed according to its etymology, where general, from a historical standpoint, in this particular phrase, general is not a noun, meaning a person at the head of something, but rather is an adjective. So it's the attorney who is general, that is in charge of a particular office or department or whatever. It's not the general who happens to be an attorney, which would be the two different analyses for it. So we do have, there is a precedent within English for this kind of let's call it internal plurals. It seems kind of silly with regard to caterpillars or cheeseburger, but we do have parallels for it. Just out of curiosity, how many of you say attorneys general, or how many of you say attorney generals? Any, maybe it's not a word you think you, or a phrase that you pluralize or think about or say very often. Someone tells us in the chat that Claire likes attorney generals. Okay, good. Thank you. All right, how many of you like attorneys general?
I feel like I usually say it in kind of formal context and not just
Yeah.
talking about them.
If you listen on the news, most newscasters these days, at least, will say attorneys general,
Yeah.
because they somehow know who someone. When we were talking about this a few minutes ago with Kathleen Parker's piece, the issue of prescriptiveness came up. So, and this, from a prescriptive standpoint, attorneys general is, quote, correct. And I'm using scare quotes because the notion of correctness in linguistic usage is a somewhat problematic notion. So the yeah, so this intersects with issues of correctness and therefore prescriptiveness. Okay. So we will, I guess it's worth digressing a little bit more. We'll come back to Kathleen Parker by and by, but in addition to this, so this comic that Sarah brought to my attention and actually turned out to be useful today, this question of whether an innovation in a single speaker constitutes a change in the language or not is has received some attention in the popular oh, I know, I want my one word. That's what I want. Yeah, so there was this song that came out in 1967 during the height of the protest against the war in Vietnam. When I was in high school, actually, and a song that was written and sung or performed by Arlo Guthrie. Have any of you ever heard of Arlo Guthrie? A few of you? Okay. Have you ever heard this particular song, Alice's Restaurant Massacre? It's really kind of cool. It's like a sort of like a stream of consciousness rap in the old sense, not like rap music today, but a stream of consciousness spiel about ultimately about protest and trying to escape the draft, which was a reality of life for many young men in the 1960s into the early 70s, to avoid the draft by acting so weird that you were thought to be sort of unfit for military service. And there it is, Sarah, on YouTube. Yeah, it's well worth watching. It's about 40 minutes long, I think, and it takes up 7 pages, the lyrics. But I wanted to draw your attention to one thing that Guthrie has here that I've highlighted. It says, and it has to do with this story about taking out garbage at Alice's restaurant and what happens there, and police get involved and so forth. But he says here, if he's ultimately, in telling this story, he's ultimately called before the draft board, and they want to give him a psychological evaluation. And he goes into this story about Alice's restaurant, and he says to the shrink, to the psychiatrist who's evaluating him, "You can get anything you want at Alice's restaurant." And he says, "Okay, so suppose you just walk in and you say, 'Shrink, you can get anything you want at Alice's restaurant.'" He actually sings it. I'm not much of a singer. and then you walk out. Now, this is what I want you to pay attention to. He says, you know, if one person, just one person does it, they may think he's really sick and they won't take him. That is, take him into the military. And if two people do it in harmony, then they might think they're both weird and they won't take either of them. And if three people do it, can you imagine 3 people walking in, singing a bar of Alice's Restaurant and walking out? They may think it's an organization. So there's sort of a threshold here. At some point, it becomes more than just an individual quirk. They may think it's an organization. And can you imagine 50 people a day? I said 50 people a day walking in, singing a bar of Alice's Restaurant and walking out. And friends, they may think it's a movement. And that's what it is. The Alice's Restaurant Anti-Massacre movement. And all you got to do is to join is sing in the next time it comes on the guitar with feeling. So notice that this is really, we could think of this as like a linguistic innovation. So when one person does it, what do they say? They think he's really sick. It's just an oddity of this one person. If 2 people do it, then you have to begin to pay attention. But maybe 2 isn't quite enough. But if 3 people do it, and then if 50 people do it, it becomes a movement. So this is actually an analog to what we talk about with the evaluation of innovation and the spread of an innovation. And it's often, linguists will often say that it isn't enough for there just to be an innovation. It has to be evaluated in such a way that people want to adopt it and do adopt it. So evaluation and so innovation, let me do it this way. Innovation and spread together give change. But to some linguists, in thinking about these things, the fact of an innovation alone introduces something new into the overall system. That would be looking at language from sort of the union point of view. Whereas they say, well, only if it spreads, then you begin to have real change. Then that's where we can talk about some commonality, some intersection in a linguistic feature among different speakers. So these are broad sort of philosophical questions, but they provide a foundation for a lot of what we'll be needing to think about throughout this semester. Okay, so thank you, Sarah. This was actually quite relevant. I knew it would be relevant eventually, and that's what I mentioned to you earlier, but I didn't realize that we would be able to make hay with it today. But let's get back to Kathleen Parker just to, because there's one in particular that I wanted to talk about. What about this no problem business, the last nit that she's nitpicking at? First of all, is she alone in noticing this, or have others of you noticed no problem used for as a response to thank you?
I actively use it as a response to thank you.
Yes, good. Who is that? Kyle?
Kyle, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And I dare say that a lot of people are that way. She wrote this, I think, in 2012, if I remember right. I'm not sure what the tipping point was for that, but it certainly is quite common. She said, as opposed to the previously accepted "you're welcome" or "my pleasure." And what is she doing in reacting to this? How is she interpreting no problem?
Well, I think today it's used like semi-idiomatically, I guess, just like an automatic response to thank you. But she's saying like, oh, it's not polite, it's not good etiquette. It's like, I wouldn't have done it if it were a burden on me, you know?
Right, so she's now, this is going to lead us into etymology, which has to, does anyone know what the definition of etymology is? I think we mentioned it last time, but someone like to take a stab at a definition? you guys are in luck because I already did that. The study of the origin of words and the way in which their meanings have changed throughout history. Etymology. So what she's really doing is she's interpreting no problem in its etymological sense. And that's where what Julia was talking about with sort of correctness and prescriptiveness comes into play. So in her concerns here about no problem, she says it seems to be customary. Said, what does that mean? That it really wasn't all that much trouble? That the service is a problem to be solved? So she's thinking about it not in this sort of idiomatized way that Julia referred to, but rather thinking of it in its etymological sense. So we can think about this as etymologically, is that there is not a problem here. If I could type logical notation, we would have the bar or little caret sign or whatever saying that there is no. So, but etymologically, this means there is no problem here. But as a response to thank you, in its etymological, or what we might call compositional sense. Have any of you run into this this term before in having to do with semantics, compositionality? It means that compositionality means that the meaning of a composite form is the sum of the meaning of its parts. So no problem from a compositional standpoint, from an etymological standpoint, would be negation, negating a problematic situation of some sort. But when we start dealing with idioms, what we're really getting is, let's say versus. Idiomatization is really giving non-compositionality. And so if we look at no problem as meaning, as a response to thank you, it's really non-compositional in its meaning. And when we have idioms, we see that non-compositional meanings come to be attached to a particular phrase or element. So let's see. Does anyone know what the etymology of etymology is? Some of you have Greek, I think have had some Greek, but in any case, it comes from a Greek word, etymos, which is an adjective that means true. And as a noun, it means the true sense of a word according to its origins. So the ancient Greeks, in thinking about the meanings of words, they had this notion in mind that the etymology, the origin of the word, defines what its meaning is. And stated in this way, what it really is saying is that it defines the meaning for all time, that the etymology, the origin of the word, gives you its true meaning. It's a kind of prescriptivist notion. And what does it say about the possibility for semantic, what we could call semantic change in meaning? Does this notion of etymology as giving the true sense of a word, does that allow for change in the meaning? No, it doesn't. Exactly. So so from this point of view, no problem could never be used to mean you're welcome, because its etymological meaning, its etymological composition, its true meaning, as for the Greeks here, for the ancient Greeks, would be defined by its compositional meaning of negation, negating a problematic situation. Do you all see the relationship between it's really saying that there won't be a change. If you take this seriously, if you take etymology seriously according to its etymology, then we won't have it doesn't admit for the possibility of change in the meaning attached to a particular word. So what else can we say here? Oh yeah. So what about this phrase "you're welcome" as a response to thank you? Is it compositional?
For me, it doesn't make sense.
For you, why not, Marcia?
Because welcome, yeah, welcome. Because as a foreigner, you know, I translated everything when I started learning English, for example, and then welcome, okay, then I pick up the orange, and then you are welcome. You're welcome.
Yeah,
doesn't make any sense for me.
So what do we see with "you're welcome" in terms of some of the notions that we've just been talking about? Is it compositional?
Yeah,
In this use as a response to thank you? Is it compositional?
I think so.
Or does everyone agree with Marcia on that?
I think it's not compositional
Why do you say that?
because the meaning of "your" and "welcome" doesn't mean the way that we say it.
Yeah, I think that I think that Isabel's right here that "you're welcome" as a response to thank you is non-compositional. It's really undergone a kind of idiomatization. It's become an idiomatic that is a non-compositional response. It no longer means that you have come in a good fashion or something like that. It no longer means bienvenue or bienvenido or benevenuto or whatever. It has moved into a different realm altogether, a different function altogether. So I think that that it's kind of interesting in a way. Does anyone see an incongruity then in or an inconsistency in Kathleen Parker's response here about "no problem"?
I think "you're welcome" makes about as much, if not less, sense than "no problem" as a response.
Exactly. No, yeah, I think so. She's saying, well, why, what's wrong with "you're welcome"? We've been saying that forever. Not really, but we've been saying that for, for some time. And so why should we change it? Well, why not change it? So at some point, "you're welcome" must have had the same jarring kind of feeling to some speakers as a response to thank you, as "no problem" does for Kathleen Parker. That's I can't prove that, but that's my surmise here, my guess. Okay, so I'm going to move on a little bit. Oh, well, let me just I'll be interested to read your comments, but how many of you would have liked her piece if it were possible to give it a thumbs up or thumbs down? I'm not seeing a lot of enthusiasm for her. How many of you have pet peeves of your own, linguistic pet peeves of your own? You could be honest here. So what I do is I say, look, as a linguist, I'm committed to the idea that variation is good. It's natural. It's a part of life, as linguistic life, as I say. But as a linguist, I have a professional commitment to being as anti-prescriptive as possible. But as a speaker of the language, I'm entitled to have some of my own prejudices about particular words and phrases and so forth. So I think that you can admit to personal linguistic pet peeves without being at odds with your professional linguistic training. But anyway, I'll be interested to have a look at what you've written for today. Let me just as a slight change of pace, let me play for you this a clip from a movie called Basketball. I don't know if any of you know this film. It came out 5 years ago or so, but it's commenting on the names of professional sports teams as they've moved from one city to another, set up shop in another city. Are any of you football or basketball fans? Nope. Okay.
I mean, I'm a big football fan, which is why Monday really hurt.
Oh yeah, no kidding. Okay, well, I'm not sure. I'll play this. I'm not sure how much meaning it will have if you're not into football or basketball. But let's see. Let's play it. And there's a slight. Hang on a sec. There's a slight. I need to mention this as a trigger warning. There is a 4-letter word that you might hear, and I hope that it won't offend any of you. And if it does, I apologize. It comes around at about the 15-second mark. But let me play this.
Much like the hired guns of the Old West. And after playing for...
Can you all hear that? Okay, good. So as this guy stops speaking, there's a 4-letter word which you can tune out if you want, and then we'll pay attention to what comes just after he speaks. Okay, so here we go.
Much like the hired guns of the Old West. And after playing for New England, San Diego, Houston, St. Louis, a year for the Toronto Argonauts, plus 1 season as a greeter at the Desert Inn, I'm happy to finally play here in the fine city of Miami.
Minnesota.
Whatever. Shit.
Soon it was commonplace for entire teams to change cities in search of greater profits. The Minneapolis Lakers moved to Los Angeles, where there are no lakes. The Oilers moved to Tennessee, where there is no oil. The Jazz moved to Salt Lake City, where they don't allow music. The Oakland Raiders moved to LA and then back to Oakland. No one in Los Angeles seemed to notice. The search...
Okay, so let me get out of that. And so the point that that they were making is that the teams have moved around, and names that made sense at one point, like the Minneapolis Lakers. What is sensible about talking about lakes with regard to Minneapolis? Anyone? Do you know what the nickname for the state of Minnesota is?
Land of 10,000 lakes.
Exactly, the land of 10,000 lakes. And so they say how many, they moved to Los Angeles, they keep the name Lakers, but how many lakes are there in Los Angeles? Not very many, yes. Big Z, little O. The Houston Oilers, why does that make sense? Oilers associated with Houston. Anyone?
There's a lot of oil in Texas.
Yeah, a lot of oil in Texas, and Houston is sort of the big spot for the refining of oil into various petroleum products. And they moved to Tennessee seeking greener pastures, as they say. But how much oil is there in Tennessee? Not a lot, as they say. So also with the Jazz, the Utah Jazz, a basketball team, started out in New Orleans. Jazz in New Orleans makes sense as a pairing, as an association, but in Utah, jazz, it's just another word. So so we can see here that names or terms that started out as we can use this term motivated at one point become less motivated due to, in this case, external changes, namely the city in which they are located. But it's interesting that that we see with Tennessee. The Tennessee Oilers, that was their name in the first year in Tennessee, but after that, they realized, well, wait, Oiler and Tennessee, that doesn't quite go together. So there wasn't the same degree of motivation to the name in Tennessee Oilers as there had been with Houston, the Houston Oilers. And so they actually, in the second year, they changed their name to the Tennessee Titans. Now, I don't think Titans is necessarily all that well motivated as far as Tennessee is concerned. It's not like they were giants ruling the earth in Tennessee at any point in its history or prehistory, but it's at least alliterative, right? Tennessee Titans. That you get the consonant alliteration across the name. So we really see with this and this is something that will come up again and again throughout our examination of language change. We see the push and pull of different forces. So Houston Oilers, we could think of it as kind of regular, at least in that it was a motivated association. When they moved to Tennessee, the Tennessee Oilers was unmotivated as an association. And then the lack of motivation was repaired in a certain way. It was repaired in a certain way, at least phonically, at least in terms of the sound. Tennessee Oilers becoming Tennessee Titans. So we see really here the push and pull of different forces at work in shaping this very small sector of language. But we'll see that these sorts of things play a role in other domains as well. So I actually had a couple of exercises for you that I thought you could do in a breakout room. I'm going to set one of them aside. I'll put it it's in the on the Carmen module, and I'll attach a little explanation. But it has to do with I'll spend a minute on it here. It has to do with with this question of sort of etymological versus non-etymological meaning. And does the question that we might consider is a word's etymology its destiny, so to speak? Is it, and from the point of view of the Greek etymology of etymology, that is the true meaning of a word based on its origin, the idea seemed to be that the etymology is your destiny. Once you have a particular origin, that's where you that's as far as you can go. But the reading, and I'll just ask you to do it as reading for interest, but it has to do with this is sort of again in somewhat in a football mode, but also in the issues of social justice that we talked about briefly last time. The word redskin, as you may know, there's a move. There had been a move for many years underway to. It's the name of a football team, the Washington professional football team, and there was a move underway to change it because it was change the football team's name because this is felt to be pejorative, and the pejoration, the pejorative sense, is it can be demonstrated to be is its synchronic present day sense, whereas etymologically, and it's felt to be pejorative because as a pejorative term talking about American Indians, But what this piece that I'll ask you to read at your leisure, it's not an assignment, is a linguist, Ives Goddard, who was the American Indian language curator at the Smithsonian. He and an expert in American Indian languages, he determined that that Indians themselves used red skin as a self designation. So that it wasn't, in its origin, he claims, it wasn't pejorative. Now it has come to be pejorative, and so that the changing the football team's name is, I think, is eminently sensible, and ultimately that's the Washington team has done that, though it took a lot of pressure. But because of its synchronic sense, its present day sense, but so historically, so diachronically, historically, etymologically, non-pejorative. And which one should hold sway? The diachronic sense or the synchronic sense? That's something that can be debated, and I would suggest that maybe you can read that and think about it. As I say, it's not an assignment. It's just if you have time on your hands and want to read something interesting. This kind of notion of etymological versus non-etymological meanings has a real life application in the political realm as well. The Second Amendment to the Constitution talks about the right to bear arms, but in the context of a well-regulated militia. And then it goes on to talk about being a well-regulated militia, blah, blah, blah. The right to keep and bear arms shall not be abridged. And a lot of the discussion about how to interpret that really hinges on what it means to be a militia. And at the time, and so we can raise the question of in the late 18th century, did militia mean what it means today? That's a linguistic question. It bears on this issue, this broader issue of etymological meaning. Can meanings change? Can the real world referent that a word is attached to, can that connection change? And and there's a philosophical issue here about, so how do we interpret the Constitution? Do we interpret it in terms of what its meaning was at the point of origin? That would be like the Greek point of view with regard to etymon. The true meaning is its etymological meaning, or do we interpret it in terms of its present day sense? And I don't know what the answer is here, but I'm trying to give you a linguistic or a real life analog to these linguistic questions about language change that we'll be confronting in this class. So in the remaining 15 minutes, I'd like to do a breakout room exercise to give you a chance to talk to one another. I'm going to stop sharing. And what I'm going to do is put in the chat a, this should go to everyone. I'm going to put in the chat a file, which is an in-class exercise, will be a breakout room exercise, having to do with looking at at 3 different sentences from different stages of English: Old English, Middle English, and Modern English. And in order to get us all in the mood, I'm going to show you my T-shirt of the day. This is the first first folio of Beowulf, which is the oldest or one of the oldest English texts that we have. This is from the Cotton manuscript from about 1,000 years ago, and this is what it looks like. And it starts out what they yard, so forth. I will post a picture of this so you can study it at your leisure, and you can find out information about it. But Beowulf is an epic of Old English literature. It's not the oldest piece of Old English that we have, but it's the largest piece, and it's poetic, and it has the deep history, and it's very interesting in its own right. But what I'd like you to do, I'll put you into these breakout rooms, and I'd like you to spend maybe just 5 minutes going through this exercise of trying to see what differences there are that you can notice between these different stages of English compared to modern English. So I will, there are 14 of you, so I'll put you into 3 breakout rooms of 5 each. Let's say 4 breakout rooms. So it'll be either 3 or 4 of you, and it'll just give you a chance to say hello to one another and also to have a look. So download this document before we go into breakout rooms, because you won't have access to it. And we'll spend about 5 minutes or so. Just keep a list of some of the things that you notice as are different between each of the sentences from earlier stages of English and what we have, and the corresponding modern English counterpart. And then we'll reconvene in about 5 minutes or so and compare notes. And that'll be the class for today. Okay, so here is, you'll be randomly assigned to breakout rooms. I think you all have some experience with this, and you can go from there. So I will, 5 minutes or so, I'll give you the signal that we'll be ending, and you'll come back to the class. Okay? Everyone understood? Understand what's up? Okay, good. Open all rooms. You'll be invited to a room, and then you join the room, and you can hang out with one another. Record, okay. I know they're all in breakout rooms right now, hanging out with one another and discussing something. So I have a bit of a respite. Oh, really? The cat? What are you saying? Uh-huh. What was it like out? It looks like it is. Yeah. Oh, good. You're coming back. Excellent. So it's working. Okay, everyone back? Not quite. I know this probably wasn't enough time to really do justice to this exercise, but it gives you a starting point. I probably should have let each room do a different stage of English. But what it looks like we're still missing one room, one room's worth of people. Room 3, are you guys coming back? I don't know. Can I kick them out of rooms? I don't think so. There we go. Okay, good. We've got everyone now. Good. Welcome back. So we have about 5 minutes. Who would like to? What changes did you notice? Anyone want to? Did you notice any changes at all? Any differences? I should say differences at all, because not all differences will turn out are changes. Anyone?
There seemed to be more verbal inflection.
Okay. Like what in particular?
So in C we have who hast, and then we have schützt.
Schützt, yeah. And
And then even in A, we have, I guess it's Shulan or Skulan.
Shulon, yeah,
Shulon.
Shulon, yeah.
It's got first person plural in the group, in the gloss.
Right. Okay. So there are differences in the way verbs get inflected. Other differences?
In A, there's just words we don't use anymore, like
Like what?
carry on and
Carry on.
ward.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We use ward, but not in the meanings have changed too.
The meaning. Okay. So there's a different meaning associated with word. It meant guardian in Old English, and now means someone who is subject to a guardian. So like ward of the state. So there's been kind of an inversion of the relationship there. What about the very first word, new, in Old English? What did you make of that? Is that the same as what we have in modern English based on its gloss? Clearly not, right? But what questions does that raise? Anyone?
Is it a phonological? Sorry. Is it a phonological change?
Yeah.
We
So
were discussing about that. Sarah told us.
Yeah. So I won't. Yeah. Let me go to the screen for a moment, and we can get back the document. Because what we can distinguish here between, so in the case of Harry on and praise versus new, versus new and now, is there a sort of a qualitative difference between what was going on in Harry on and praise and what was going on in new and now? Does anyone like to speak to that qualitative difference? In each case, an Old English form is replaced, let's say, or the corresponding modern English form is different. But is there a qualitative difference? What you Marcia, you said this was phonological in nature. How would you rate this? Is Harry on turning into praise? Is that phonological? I think, Julia, you said it's simply a different word altogether. So it looks like it's, how would you classify this? What component of language is involved? Anyone? Lexicon? Maybe having to do with the vocabulary, the words. And so one of the things that we will do, and I'll end on this, is classifying these differences according to what domain of grammar they pertain to is actually an important part of the exercise. We could, in principle, think that, well, Harry on has phonologically turned into praise. The H has turned into a P. Notice there's an R in both of them. The N has turned into an S. Maybe you could imagine some sort of phonological algorithms that would get you from Harry on to praise, but that seems kind of far-fetched. Whereas with new turning into now, it seems like they're just small adjustments that we could set at the feet of phonology. And this difference between or trying to understand what component of grammar is involved, what component of the language is involved in a particular change, turns out to drive a lot of our methodology. We will see that there are systematic differences between the way sounds change and the way lexical material changes, the way syntax changes, and the way morphology changes. So this is all just by way of giving you a taste of what's to come. So there's no class on Monday, Martin Luther King Jr. Day. There's no class on Monday. So we'll reconvene a week from today. There's a homework exercise that's due next week. As far as this this Old English thing is concerned, it was an in-class exercise. All you need to do is maybe think about it, have another look at it, because we'll come back to it at the beginning of class a week from now. So I think that is it. I will post these notes in Carmen, and the reading, the thing about Redskin is there if you want to read it, and this Old English exercise will be there also if you want to refer further to it. And have a good remainder of the week, and I'll see you guys a week from now. Okay? So long, everyone.